little bit of introductory material here. We'll be going on to a drama shortly, but I wanted to give you some background, and these are things that you should probably jot down because you may well see them again next week. Okay? So, we want to talk first about classic tragedy. Okay? Classic tragedy has been around for thousands of years. Sophocles wrote classic tragedy, and Sophocles lived thousands of years ago, and we're going to be viewing one of Sophocles' classic tragedies today. Okay, classic tragedy followed a pretty set pattern. A classic tragedy is set up in this way. It opens up with an introduction or exposition. In this first part, we get to know who the characters are. We get to see what the setting is. Okay, we learn a little bit of background, and frequently that background is presented to us by a group or an individual who is referred to as the chorus. Now, the chorus doesn't necessarily mean people who sing. In a large sense, the chorus in classic tragedy, classic drama, is like the narrator in the short stories that we looked at all semester on. Okay, all through the semester, we looked at what narrators can do. Well, in classic tragedy, the chorus frequently takes the part of the narrator because people didn't have programs in their hands that could tell them what was going on in classic tragedy. Okay, I mentioned the other day that in classic tragedy, characters frequently wore masks, and a lot of times they were big masks because these classic tragedies took place in significant sized amphitheaters. People frequently couldn't hear what people were saying, although they could read their gestures, but they couldn't read the expression on their face because they might be too far away. You know, if you sat in the last row at the theater in the auditorium here and people were performing on the stage, you might have a hard time seeing the facial expressions they were giving. And so in classic tragedy, the characters wore masks to indicate what their mood was, what kind of thoughts they were trying to give off. Okay, now they would try to speak very loud so people could hear them, but that's not always easy either. Okay, so the masks were part of it. Anyway, so we've talked about the masks, we've talked about the role of the chorus, which is really another way of saying the narrator, and we come to meet all of this in the introduction or exposition, the opening up of the drama, the opportunity to learn about the characters, okay, who they are, what they are, and what the setting is. Okay, so this is their introduction. This kind of sets the scene for us. The chorus might even give us some background information so that we can be so we can know what's going on if things happened before the actual start of the play. You know, so they're part of the play, but they're an unwritten part of the play. Okay, so part one is the introduction or exposition. The second part of the play is referred to as the rising action. And in the rising action, we get the beginning of conflict. Things start to happen. It isn't just telling, nice and smooth things, but we're actually getting, in a sense, action, whether it's through words or whether it's through emotions or whether it's through real actions. We are seeing a rising of the tension that's going on. We are seeing the start of conflict probably between the protagonist and the antagonist. Not necessarily so. It could be between the protagonist and his world around him. Okay? So rising action or complication is set in motion by the start of conflict. Okay? The next part of a classic drama is referred to as the high point or the climax. Climax doesn't mean end, it means the high point. It means the coming together of the action. It means when everything is hitting its peak. It's when things are running at their fastest pace. Okay? That's the climax. And the climax may well not come until pretty late in the play, or it may come in the middle of the play, depending on how long the next step is going to be. Okay? So this is when the conflict reaches its peak. Okay? And then the fourth part of classic drama is the falling action. Obviously, we had rising action, we had hitting the peak, and now we have falling action. And in falling action, things start to slow down a little bit. The high point has been hit, and so not necessarily that life is back in place yet, but things are at least moving toward beginning to move toward some kind of a solution or something like that. That's called the falling action. There may still be some conflict. It may not be over, but the worst of the conflict is past us. And sometimes we've already come to a settling or close to a settling between the protagonist and the antagonist. And then the last part is the final coming together. It is referred to as the denouement, which is a French word, or again, the resolution. Okay, we have seen the catastrophe happen. Life has slowed down, and now things are being resolved, coming together. Life is trying to really return to normal for the characters. Okay, so those are the 5 parts of a classic tragedy. Okay, so make sure you know those. Now, in classic tragedy, first of all, tragedy does not just mean a sad ending. In a tragedy, we have to have a lofty character. So it can't just be Joe Schmo from down the block. It's got to be a character with some kind of moral and social importance. Somebody who's a critical character in the whole play. Okay, that's an important part of it. And this person will come to a downfall, and in that downfall, the downfall will be caused by his own shortcomings, his own something within him that causes this to happen. Frequently, that's pride. Not always, but frequently, that shortcoming is personal pride. And let's face it, there probably is no greater shortcoming in all of us than personal pride. We do things to disrespect people because of our own sense of, or our own poor personal pride, or we do things to battle with people because we have our own sense of pride that we can't keep in order. Pride is often the problem. So to have a tragedy, we have to have a lofty character, a king, a prince, a high-level cleric, some kind of high-level person who comes to a really unhappy ending, not necessarily death, but a really unhappy ending, and it's caused by his or her own personal downfall, his or her own personal shortcoming. Okay, so this stuff is important parts of classical tragedy. Now, another important thing that I want you to make sure you understand with classical tragedy is this. Classical tragedy is really the exposing of the human condition. So even though we may never be in the same kind of situation that we see characters in classic tragedy, and hopefully we will never, what we're seeing are the kinds of human emotions at play that all of us experience in our lives. They may not be the same actions, but they are the same motions. we all go through the same kinds of trials. So in viewing drama, you need to look a whole lot more than into what the actions of the drama are. You need to also look at the human things that are happening and what human things inside us we can feel. So in the drama that we're going to watch now, Oedipus Rex, okay, we'll never go through the individual things that Oedipus is going through, and we'll see what those things are. But we will all go through things where we will feel challenged. We will all go through things where we think we have to do certain things, even though other people tell us that's not the right thing to do. We will all go through things where we make mistakes, okay? And so that's what we should be looking into when we see drama is how does my life, how does this drama reflect me as a human being? Okay. Now, some of you in this class have not been able to get beyond the idea that literature is just stories that don't have anything to do with me. And so in some of the papers you've written, you only touch upon the facts of the story and not the parts that relate to you. And we've been trying to get beyond that all year long. Okay. That's what we want you to do as you're watching this drama. Okay. The things that happen to Oedipus aren't things that are going to happen to you, but they are human things. And those human things will happen to you on a different level, in a different way, but they will be stressing the human being in Oedipus the same way they will be stressing you in your own life, okay? So think about those things as we go on here, okay? And we will be watching the video of Oedipus Rex. It will probably take us today and Thursday to do, and that's cool because it's a great drama. Keep in mind that the chorus has a role, an important role, and sometimes the chorus seems like they're just singing songs. That's just kind of giving us a certain background to pay attention to the tone of those things when that is happening. Okay?